Yeah, so just when we were getting started, before we hit record here today, talking about how that self-talk, that self-doubt, we were kind of going through some examples of our own, how it's keeping us from maybe not accomplishing what we really want in life and how to combat that. So today, just want to jump on and talk about some self-compassion, self-love, dealing with the self-talk that's going on all the time. You listen to an episode of a podcast that I haven't listened to it yet in full transparency, but I'm looking forward to it. And maybe we'll leave a link to that podcast episode from somebody else that was talking about this subject, which is why you brought it to my attention. But tell me more about, you had the idea of compassion, self-love, dealing with that self-talk, that self-doubt. Tell me more. Tell me more what your thoughts are, Greg.
Yeah, so this topic, then this is what I like about personal development. I think we've talked about this past couple episodes, but there's so many different avenues and lanes that you can go down. And I was, scrolling through podcasts when I usually listen to podcasts at night when I go to bed. And I saw one on self-compassion and I was like, what is this topic? Well,
what is that even, right?
What does that mean? Yeah, exactly. How does that play into personal development? And it was one of those things where I know a lot of times I listen to the same thing or a similar thing over and over to kind of like just pound it in my head sometimes. And I was like, oh, well, let me learn about something new, like a new perspective, a new area. And then self-compassion came up. I just hit play. And like Randy said, we're going to drop that in the show notes. But it was one of the best episodes on self-compassion that I still listen to it every once in a while as a reminder. And it just sparked this interest in self-compassion and really made me think about how am I talking to myself. And we'll kind of get into some of the specifics, but that's kind of where this whole topic came from today, was just my curiosity and hitting play on a random podcast. And here we are.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we're always trying to find that next thing, right? The next nugget of wisdom from other folks, which kind of takes us back into our peak framework that we've developed here on the Rich Mind podcast. P being the personal development, E being the education or self-education, A being some inspired action, taking action, and K, the knowledge, right? Seeking knowledge from others, wisdom from folks that are either here or even gone. I'm always referring to folks like Jim Rohn, Earl Nightingale, the greats, right? Bob Proctor's unfortunately passed in the last year or two. Just the wisdom of those folks and how you can incorporate those ideas in your life, which fits completely within this framework of peak, which is why I'm super excited to dive into this conversation. So, but I'm going to let you lead this one, to be honest with you. I have questions. I didn't listen to this episode. I have a story that I'll share even about myself as we go along. But yeah, tell me more about what you've discovered about going down this path with your own self-education and your personal development as far as diving into this, the compassion for yourself and the self-talk.
Yeah, I think it started with the self-talk for me, just realizing that there's always a voice in your head saying something. There's never a dull moment. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I didn't even realize that because, you're thinking about, I don't want to say normal things, but, work and sports and what am I going to do today, that kind of thing. But then what I'm really talking about is, how you're talking to yourself as far as, how you show up for your goals, how you show up as a friend or a husband, and how you show up for yourself, right? When you wake up in the morning, your thoughts immediately kick in. There's no grace period, right? So you can start your day with, some positive self-talk or some positive thoughts, or you can think about all the problems that you have in your life. That's the negative side. It's your choice. And that was one of the things that I really took out from that episode. The guest basically said, he's like, you're talking to yourself anyway, so you might as well speak well to yourself. And it's not an easy process because of the way our brains are just kind of trained. Sometimes we just go negative. So it's work, and it's a lot of work. Thinking is not hard, but thinking consciously is, and controlling your thoughts is hard work. And I think that's why a lot of people, including myself in the past, just kind of shied away from it and didn't want to acknowledge my thoughts and just thought on the surface level of what's going on today, what am I having for lunch, that kind of thing, instead of how can I make this day better? How can I speak to myself in a more positive way? So that's kind of the jumping off point for me from that episode anyway.
So getting in the driver's seat of your consciousness or your thoughts, the processes that are going on in your own mind. That's when I heard you say that, those are the thoughts that I've got even in my own mind, is I'm thinking, how can I impact this moment that we have right now. So like you said, our minds are racing all the time. Sometimes it's good. Most of the time, I would say, based on our upbringing and based on our programming and things like that, it can be negative. So it's that negative self-talk when you're putting yourself down and you don't even realize that you're doing it. Or a doubt creeps in. Last time, in the last episode, we talked about triggers. That's been kind of where that has been for me. So a trigger would set off a series of negative self-talk in my own mind to the point where it would basically keep me stuck. I would be stuck in a negative spiral to the point where I would never be able to get myself out. And I had to, like you said, it's hard work. It was hard work. So it's not, so, people might be thinking, okay, hard is what? What does that mean, hard? And it's hard just meaning it's a challenge to take control. It's a challenge to recognize, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's almost like that movie Matrix, right? It's once you take the red pill, it's like, he tells Neo, he's like, once you take this pill, you can't go back. And it's the same thing with personal development. Once you start going down this road, you're on the road, and it's a great thing. But at the same time, it can be very, very challenging, but it's very, very rewarding. Anyways, so I resonate with that idea of self-compassion, self-love. I'll be honest and transparent for myself. And I still struggle with this to this day. I've caught myself saying out loud, even to my wife, this is going to sound terrible. I'm thinking about that right now. Like, this is going to sound bad. And that's that negative self-talk in my own mind. But I would say to her that I don't like myself. I don't like who I am. I don't like the fact that I stumble with my words sometimes. I don't like the fact that I don't read real well, because I don't read well. I don't like the fact that XYZ. So I would say it, and I would say it often to her. And I finally caught myself doing it. Like, I was in a negative mindset, something was going on I'd been triggered by something. So then I started going down this negative rabbit trail. And I would, during this spell of negativity, I would always complain or have a discussion, however you want to put it, with my wife. And in that discussion, I would say that I just don't like myself. I don't like myself. And it's like, why am I doing that? What is putting catching that in real time and discovering and realizing that, number one, there's no one else but you on this world that can do the things that you can do. And I have to realize that for myself. I have to be okay with who I am. I have to realize that I'm not perfect. And neither are you, neither am I, neither is anybody. But we just show up to be the best person we possibly can. So this self-compassion. So when you say compassion, that's the word that resonates with me the most. I've got to give myself some grace. I've got to give myself some compassion to understand that, no, I'm not perfect. No, I'm not going to do everything perfect. No, I'm not as smart as some. No, I'm not a gazillionaire like others. But I have to be happy and content and grateful for what I've been able to accomplish up to this point. So I just wanted to share that with you as far as, I struggle with this idea of compassion, self-love, the self-talk just as much as anybody, but I'm actively working on it. It's an active journey. And I guess that's the point I want to bring home to everybody here listening today, is that if you don't get in the driver's seat, if you don't take control, work towards getting control, then it's always going to be controlling you. And that's the unfortunate part I see a lot of folks struggle with.
Yeah, I can definitely resonate to, pretty much everything that you said there. Like you said, we're all human and we're trying to figure out life and relationships and business. And, it's murky and muddy a lot of the times,
Yes.
especially within our own heads. But yeah, I really like what you said when you're talking about you're taking action, right? You're trying to be aware of it. And that's one thing that I constantly ask myself, whether it's like a business or a fitness goal or whatever is, will this action move me closer to my goal? Right. And that's very tangible. You can check yes or no. But in this conversation, it's, will this thought move me closer to my goal of maybe being happier or being less hard on myself? And that's something that you have to consciously think about, because those negative thoughts will take over, like you said, and spiral you down. And, but the other way is you can spiral up, right? With positive talk and really questioning, well, is that thought true? No, it's not true. I'm a great reader. So throw that out of my head. It's not true. Don't worry about it. Move on to the next thought that's going to move me in a positive direction. And, like you said, we all have our own strengths and weaknesses. And if you want to work on your weaknesses, you can. You don't have to, but, it's all up to you. And it's all literally in your head and what you tell yourself. So it's, yeah, I don't know. It's a real interesting topic. I really like diving into this one because I can relate to it. And I think we all can, because we all have that voice that is just constantly chattering at us 24/7.
24/7, 365. It's chattering it to us as we speak right now, isn't it? So yeah, that's always the challenge. So you made reference there to strengths and weaknesses. And that's kind of one thing that I've done better with myself, is that there are things that I'm really good at, that I know I'm really good at. I can do certain things really, really well that I love doing. So that maybe would be something for you listening to us today, folks, is what is something that in your day-to-day activities, it can be a hobby, it can be something you do at maybe your job, or something that you're starting to try to do a business with. But there are aspects to your daily activities that you really enjoy doing. And so during this times of reflection for myself, I've discovered what those things are. One of them is not reading. But what I will tell you is that I listen. I'm a great audio learner. So that's why I started the podcast. That's one of the reasons why I started the podcast, is because I love this medium of communication to learn. That's where the knowledge came in for me. So I would download and listen to podcasts like there's no tomorrow. I can listen to things at 2 times speed. I played a podcast before we jumped on here today. I was playing 2 times speed that when I think about it, yeah, it sounds weird, but I can do that nonstop. And so that's helped me. Yeah, you can't do that. My wife can't either, which is super funny. But my brain can do that. I can absorb information at that rate of speed, but I don't read well on a page. It's not that I'm illiterate. I can read. I just don't read well. So I've had to learn that. And so I've embraced the fact that, okay, I might not be skilled at one thing, but I'm actually very skilled at another. So I can go find, that's where the technology these days is fantastic, right? So Audible, podcasts these days, all of those things they're awesome for me because I can get so much done in a relatively short period of time. But it's stepping into what you're good at, stepping into your strengths. You made reference about possibly just trying to improve some of your weaknesses. It's not that I'm not trying to improve them. It's just like I'm just trying to be aware that they're there, but I don't beat myself up over them, or I'm trying to not beat myself up over them the way I used to. I'm trying to be okay with the fact that I'm not great at certain things, but then shining a light on the things that I am good at and trying to get better at them every single time, right? So that would be my encouragement based on the conversation so far today, is to focus on your strengths. Don't bury your weaknesses, but just don't beat yourself up over your weaknesses, because what I did for the longest time is that I would focus so much on my weaknesses that it would keep me from moving forward, taking action on my strengths. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So yeah. So any thoughts on that? I mean, yeah. So when I think about that, I'm trying to think that in real time, like how I'm trying to handle those kinds of things in my own mind. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I like the fact that, the strengths and weaknesses, because I've heard, work on your weaknesses to make you better. But then I've heard the opposite is, if you have a weakness, if you can delegate that out or partner up with somebody who that's their strength, then you work on your strength. Then you have 2 people that are operating from, their strength in either business or communication or whatever it is. Then you have a powerhouse, as opposed to somebody who has one strength and a mediocre weakness that you're trying to work on, but you're frustrated because you don't really like it. So
yeah,
I'm in that second camp of, I'd rather become an expert and really work on my strengths and delegate out my weaknesses or things that just don't really light a fire under me.
So this podcast, this collaboration with you, that's a perfect example, whether you're referring to that or not. To me, that's exactly what you just described. So it's been the journey of myself over the last several years of realizing and not beating myself so much up over my weaknesses, that I've learned that, okay, I just need to find folks that have strengths in my weaknesses and try to collaborate with them as much as I possibly can. There's things that I do and that I enjoy doing. That, for example, even with this podcast, Greg doesn't like doing some of the things that I do to create and produce this podcast, and vice versa. He's going to help me take a lot of the things off my plate that I don't necessarily want to do, like to do, but together, combined, putting, like you said, it's a powerhouse, right? The idea, we've got this big vision and we can start pulling that together. But the reason why is because we're not focusing on our weaknesses, we're focusing on our strengths, and we're going to bring those strengths together in one unit or one package, right? And obviously then try to add value as much as we possibly can in the marketplace. But that self-compassion, that ability to be okay with who you were meant to be, going through the the core wound challenge or core wound exercise that we discussed in the previous episode, I think will be a huge step. So if you didn't catch that episode, I recommend you go back to the core wound exercise episode. Figure out what that is for yourself. Where is this negative self-talk even coming from? For me, it was a lot of self-doubt. I would put a lot of emphasis and expectations on others. And then when I would get disappointed, I would think that it was me. Like their being disappointed, I thought was me, when in fact it had nothing to do with me. It was whether they meant to or didn't mean to disappoint me. Anyways, the point is, go through that exercise. We won't rehash that here today, but go through that. I think that would be super valuable, because then it will allow you then to start seeing some of these areas of compassion that you need to have for yourself, the self-love. Like I said, for the longest time, I've said out loud verbally that I don't like myself, and I've got to stop that. I mean, that's just can you imagine? Yeah, I've been doing it. I raise my hand. That's me. And if you're doing that out there too, folks, stop. You just have to stop it. You've got to catch it, see it, and just stop it. And then don't beat yourself up over it if you are still doing it. It's like you just have to slow it down. Keep it from happening over and over and over. And that's when you can take these different actions, find folks that can complement your weaknesses, and then who knows where you can go from there, which is why it's super fun.
Yeah, so I have two things that you kind of brought up there. The first one is, if you're operating from your strengths, you're obviously going to have better self-talk, more positive self-talk, as opposed to if you're in your weaknesses and you're trying to increase something that you don't really want to do, you're going to have those self-doubt talks of, should I be doing this? I'm not good at this, that kind of thing. So that's just another reason maybe to focus on your strengths and find other people for your weaknesses to maybe partner up with. And the other thing that I took out from what you just said and the podcast episode that we're referencing is he basically said, try to talk to yourself like you would talk to your best friend. If your best friend came to you and said, oh, I'm really down on myself, I don't think I'm a good business person, I can't communicate very well, or whatever it is, you'd be like, well, if my my best friend Kevin, he said that to me, I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, you're right, you're not good at this, you're not. You would never say that, right? Because
no, never.
A, believe it, and B, like, that's not being a good friend, but it's really thinking, and it's putting on a different hat of, if my buddy said that to me, what would I say to him? And then just reflect it. It's like looking in a mirror of, no, you got this. You're fine. You have these skills and, everything we're talking about here, but it just kind of lightens the load a little bit of, because when you talk to yourself, it's easy to go negative. But when you're talking to somebody else and you picture their face or their voice or whatever it is, and they're coming to you with the same exact problem, the same exact words, there's no way you would talk to your best friend the same way that you talk to yourself. And that was the biggest thing that I took out of that podcast. And again, it's not easy to implement, but when I do implement it, it really knocks me back a peg and say, all right, slow down. You're overreacting. You wouldn't talk to your best friend that way. Let's reset and then let's move forward. Any thoughts on that, Randy?
Yeah, I do. So love that. Thank you for sharing that, because that's a great way to kind of reframe it. And one thing I wanted to add, and so I'm going to throw this back to you here in just a second, but one thing that I try to do to catch my own negative self-talk is I focus on my I am statements. Have we had discussions about I am statements? Have you heard about that before?
Yep.
So it's just something that was presented to me as an opportunity to kind of catch yourself in real time when you feel like your mind is racing in areas that you don't want it to be, right? So it kind of goes along with this whole negative self-talk. And I just wanted to kind of maybe leave some folks with some something they can actually just take away from the episode. And you can, obviously this isn't going to cost you anything. It's just a matter of just catching yourself in real time, but focus on your I am statements. And what I mean by that is in your own mind. Don't say it out loud, just in your own mind. When you feel like you're racing, because I do this still to this day, when you feel like you're going to a negative place in your own mind, just I am. And you can finish that sentence with whatever you want it to be. For me, I usually like to say that I am healthy. I am wealthy. I am great. I am, and you finish the statement with whatever you feel like is necessary for you at that moment, because that's the beauty of it. No one, except unless I just told you what I say to myself, you wouldn't know. But those are my I am statements. Now you need to try to feel them in a way that you believe it, right? You can't say that I'm a millionaire or I'm a billionaire if you have 2 cents in your name. You know what I mean? If you're struggling with that part of your mindset, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle. You want it to be realistic, but at the same time, it needs to just almost calm you down. It's almost like a centering statement. It's like it just brings you back to where you are in that moment, that present moment, because your mind is just racing to a future or racing into a past. And it's conjuring up these stories, these negative stories that you have in your mind about yourself at that moment. And if you can catch it in real time and then focus on your I am statements, for me, that's been my trick. That's where I try to start my day. I lay in bed in the morning and I don't time it. So I don't know if it's 10 minutes or half an hour, but when I finally start to come to in the morning, I try to lay on my back and I just focus on my I am statement as much as I possibly can. And it's almost like it calms me down. It kind of gets my morning off better, which allows me then to jump on an interview podcast kind of like this here today. Like we're recording in the morning, but my mind is clear. I'm focused and I'm able to show up and add as much value as I can because I focus on that me, my inner talk, my self-dialogue, and that I am statement. So I just want to throw that back to you. Is there anything that you do to try to combat these negative self-talk in your own mind?
Yeah, honestly, I do the same thing with the I am. If you guys go on YouTube, there are a lot. You just put in I am statements and you can put, like Randy said, there's an I am healthy one that I listen to. It's like probably 9 or 10 minutes. There's a wealthy one. There is there's one on every
I didn't
topic.
even know that. There's YouTube videos on this stuff?
Well, yeah, it's kind of like,
I had no idea.
Like if you like want to search meditation, you go on YouTube, same thing, search I am statements.
Wow.
And sometimes I listen to them like you do in the morning in the bed. Sometimes when I'm on my morning walk, I'll just have it in my ears just to kind of, again, just pound it in my head. And then the other thing that you mentioned, the millionaire, like I'm a millionaire or a billionaire or whatever. One thing that I've learned, I think this was from Joe Dispenza, talking about like visioning your future. You can say, I am becoming a millionaire. I am becoming a Ironman athlete or whatever that vision is that you're working towards, but you can't really say you're an Ironman athlete because you've never done it. You're still training or you haven't even trained yet. But you can say, I am becoming, I am getting in better shape for this event, or so you can kind of frame it a little bit differently. So you're preparing yourself to be that in the future and see it in your mind.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. Maybe that's where I heard it from, was from folks like that on YouTube, right? I didn't even realize there was like videos and stuff on that. That's super cool. But I do that for myself. I don't listen to a recording of it, but I understand that, yeah, that would be helpful as well. But yeah, I use it almost like a meditative state. I try to just get myself to disconnect from whatever negative thought or negative thing that's going on in my mind. And I just try to bring it back to a centered thing that I want, right? Something that I desire. So I desire to be healthy, and I desire to be wealthy, and I desire to have great friends. And those are my I am statements that I just repeat to myself over and over and over. Like I said, no one's even got to know you're even doing it. But I will tell you that it's made a huge difference in my ability to then be with other people, meaning just in presence of my family, because my mind isn't racing thinking about, okay, I should be doing this or I should be doing that, or all right, you know what I mean? I'm able to be more present with whoever I'm with, whether it's you today, right now, Greg, or whether it's my wife or family. I'm able to, like I said, almost bring it back into center and calm myself down. And that's been the huge, big impact for me. So yeah, love that. Love that you brought this topic, man. Is there anything else you want to add before we start to wrap this one up here today?
I would just encourage our listeners to, really dive into this if this is something that interests you, or, like Randy and I have been speaking about, if you have that voice in your head that's, not the most positive and you talk badly about yourself or just negative in general. It's a great topic. I think it's really interesting. There's a lot of, I think, takeaways that we've given you guys from this episode alone. Just thinking about, what would you say to your friend if he came to you or she came to you with that information? YouTube, I am statements. I love the I desire to be. That's a really cool one. I'm going to start using that one. So, I think that's where I'm going to leave this one. But yeah, great topic and great episode.
Man, I appreciate you bringing it to front of mind here for us here to have the discussion. That's what it's all about. I love it, right? The collaboration between yourself, myself, try to bring in what we're working on, what we're working with. And that's the whole idea, folks, is that we're trying to add as much value to you, the listeners, as we possibly can. So we would appreciate it if you found value in this episode to share it with your family and friends. We'd greatly appreciate that. You can always head over to richmind.co and grab our resources that we have available for you. and connect with us. You can email us at info@richmind.co. Greg and we are watching and monitoring that email address all the time. And if you have questions about anything that we've discussed here today, that would be a great place for you to reach out to us directly. Ask questions. See if we can't be able to, even if we just point you in the right direction as far as a resource, a different resource than even ours. We've put several hours, we've spent thousands of dollars working on ourselves. And yeah, you may not be in a place to do that for yourself right now. But so if we can, shorten that, give you a little bit of a shortcut to a result that you're looking for, I know that I would definitely want to do that for you. And I know Greg would do that as well. So reach out to us. We would love to hear from you. So in the next episode, we're going to kind of go into a little bit more of a topic on courage. We're going to talk about courage. So to me, this self-talk, this self-compassion, all the things that we discussed here on today's episode leans into then, okay, it's time to start taking some inspired action, right? You've got a desire, you've got something you're trying to accomplish, whether it's a goal, it can be a business goal, it doesn't matter what the goal is. Let's just say for this example, we're going to start a business or we're going to start a podcast. You've got to have some courage, right? So because you're going to be running up against that self-doubt, that negative self-talk. You might be having some experiences in your outside world with people in your close influence, right, is trying to talk you into or out of doing XYZ because they don't think you can or can't do it. That's what we're going to talk about next time, is the courage to step into it and get it done. And that's the whole idea here on the Rich Mind Podcast. So once again, appreciate your time and attention, and we look forward to coming back with the next episode again very soon. Until then, bye now.